So I've had to refilm the start of this video because initially I was just going out taking infrared photographs, and now I've made a bit of a tutorial. So at the start you'll see an explanation of how I go about taking infrared photographs and how I use the filters and why I use a particular camera. And then you'll see me out and about, and some other tips as well about other things, being in London. And you'll get to see the photographs that I took. The film did come out, I'll tell you that now, so you're going to get to see some of the infrareds I did. And I wanted to do particular parts of London to see, but I know I can actually get what I did better. I know I can do better with what I've learned from this particular film. I've used infrared film for quite a few years, but not used it recently, and now I've been out with one roll of film. I know exactly what I need to do next time to overcome the problems I had on this shoot, which would be exposure problems and focusing problems, which you'll find out about now. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. When I've watched tutorials on infrared film before, I don't remember hearing this mentioned. I could have been wrong, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The difference between ordinary film and infrared film, its focal point is different. And on old classic lenses, you have the red line here, which actually shows you where your focusing point is, but the red dot here is actually for the infrared focal point. So this is another thing. If you've got your lens wide open and you're shooting at say 2.8, you're not going to have enough depth of field to get it capture that actual dot within that, so you have to move your focal point slightly to actually match that. Remember, we're working at 25 ISO here, so you need to be really careful when you take your shots you've actually got the right point, because obviously this is saying this is at f11. This is my 135 lens, so you can actually see that you have to be between left 11 and 22 at your central focal point for that to be in focus. So that's something to remember as well. So there's two methods of doing your exposure. One of them is to leave your ISO rating as 400 and then open up by 5 stops, or you just rate it at 25 and go with that reading and then put the filter over the top. Now I was really being silly because I was using this method where you put it to 400. Should have just switched to 25. It's a much easier method. 25 ISO, do a light meter reading, switch it on manual, and shadow mig enemies, oops, there you are, you've got your right exposure, or a good enough exposure to go with. You can then obviously bracket your exposure afterwards if you want to open up or go down and stop. I normally take 3 or 4 photographs of the same thing to get one shot. Okay, so the idea would be you'd start off with f16 and you'd open up the 5 stops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, that then leaves you with the problems of the depth of field. Remember I said about the little red dot, and this one's right, you can't hardly see it there, it's actually next to the big one. There's a tiny little red dot there, and that would be your focal point. So if you're focused at say 3 meters away, that's going to be out of focus unless you're running at f4. So what you'd do is you'd actually have to move your focal point slightly to there. So this is the actual infrared filter I use. It's a 55mm, and the actual lenses I have on my Olympus equipment are all 49. So I had to buy an adapter, and the reason I bought this one instead of a 49 one was the fact of the matter was I got this really cheap on eBay. It was really cheap, and the infrared filters tend to be quite expensive. Now you can use an ordinary red filter, but you won't get the same effect. You won't get anywhere near as good effect as you do with this. So that's why I bought this one. It's because it was cheap and I could get it to fit all of my Olympus lenses. Another thing to understand is the actual filter is completely opaque. You can't see barely anything through it, so each time you take a shot you have to take the filter off to refocus, unless you're working at infinite distance of course, then you don't need to do that. And that's pretty much what I was doing when I've done all these shots, other than when I took the portrait photograph. So I put this up to the lens, you'll see it just goes completely black, and that's pretty much it. It's not really see-through at all, you can't really see hardly anything. So when you're doing your photography, the recommendation would be to have it set on a tripod and then either screw this on afterwards, or if you've got a larger one, you just hold it over the front and do like a self-timer with on your tripod. Done that before, it works fine. Now I did say why I use my Olympus camera rather than any other camera, and there's a specific reason for this, other than I've got more lenses for my Olympus than I have any other. It's the fact that the filter size are all the same. So I just get one filter size that fits all. So when they say about landscape photographers and about waiting for the light, I've waited over a year for the light I'm going to get today, or hopefully anyway. I've been waiting to do some infrared photography. I did some last year and made a complete pig's ear of it, but it's Sunday and we're having these 2 days, like Saturday and Sunday, of just incredibly hot and bright weather, and the sky's pretty much clear. And I wanted to try and get some shots of like the London sites, only on the South Bank, from the South Bank because of time. So I'm going to go down and spend about an hour wandering around with an infrared film. Okay, so I finally made it into London. Had to kind of take an alternative route because I'm by the Tower of London. What happened was the trains are not going through London Bridge where I'd normally get off, and I know I'm in shadow. So it's actually worked out better for me. So I come to Tower Hill, and I'm going to walk round by the Tower of London and then onto Tower Bridge, and then go back along the South Bank to Blackfriars where I'll get the train back. So I won't be up for a great deal of time because it is so desperately hot. The sun is in exactly the right position for all the stuff I want to do in infrared, and so I'm going to head across Tower Bridge. I've been on to Tower Bridge, and when I walked across Tower Bridge from the tube station, which is behind Tower of London, and I took a few shots from there, and it's really difficult. It is such a pain. You really need to take your time when you're doing this sort of thing, because it's you have to open up 5 stops to allow for the infrared filter. Now, so you can either, they say you either meter at 25 and then take that exposure, then put the filter on, or you meter at 400 and take 5 stops, or take 5 stops. So, you know, so you're running at say 250th at f16, you then run at 125 at 3.5, that's just a guess, but that's what I've been doing. And I originally started with the 50mm lens. I've gone over my 28. It's just going to be simpler, I think, just to work with my 28 at the moment rather than the 50, because obviously what I'm photographing is quite big and quite close. The other issue you've got is you don't know or have a clue what your exposure is going to be, in the sense of, so you have to bracket anyway. So for every shot you take, you're probably taking 3 or 4 shots, and unless you're tripoded, you have to check each time you do your exposure to make sure you're in the right place. And I've made a few guffs already. I didn't want to bring a tripod on a day like this, so now I'm walking between Tower Bridge. I'll head back towards Blackfriars and take a few shots on the way, like on the Millennium Bridge. Do some classic shots. I'm probably going to switch back to my 50mm lens as well. So yeah, that it's actually a sharper lens, and it gives me a 1.8 instead of a 3.5. So that gives me more latitude for exposure as well. I'm going to be honest, I don't know whether the last lot of photographs will come out, or if any of the photographs will come out, because you're just playing with guessed exposures. And the last one, I was on top of the Millennium Bridge taking photographs of the of St Paul's Cathedral. The problem I had was the bridge is obviously silver, and I got a huge reflective problem, so I was getting the most ridiculously strange exposures. So I've tried to compensate by doing different exposures, but let's hope and see if they all come out.